The Postmaster by Rabindranath Tagore. For his first job, the postmaster came to the village of Ullapur. It was a very humble village. There was an indigo factory nearby, and the British manager had with much effort established a new post office. The postmaster was a Calcutta boy. He was a fish out of the water in a village like this. His office was in a dark thatched hut. There was a pond next to it, scummed over with weeds and jungle all around. The indigo agents and employees had hardly any spare time and were not suitable company for an educated man. Or rather, his Calcutta background made him a bad mixer. In an unfamiliar place, he was either arrogant or ill at ease. So there was not much contact between him and the residents in the area. But he had very little work to do. Sometimes he tried to write poems. The bliss of spending one's life watching the leaves trembling in the trees or the clouds in the sky, that was what the poems expressed. God knew, however, that if a genie out of an Arab tale had come and cut down all the leafy trees overnight, made a road and blocked out the sky with rows of tall buildings, this half-dead, well-bred young man would have come alive again. The postmaster's salary was meager. He had to cook for himself, and an orphaned village girl did housework for him in return for a little food. Her name was Ratan, and she was about 12 or 13. It seemed unlikely that she would get married. In the evenings, when smoke curled up from the village cowsheds, crickets grated in the bushes, a band of intoxicated baul singers in a far village sang raucously to drums and cymbals, and even a poet, if seated alone on a dark veranda, might have shuddered a little at the trembling leaves. The postmaster would go inside, light a dim lamp in a corner of the room, and call for Ratan. Ratan would be waiting at the door for this, but she did not come at the first call. She would call back, "What is it, Dada Babu? What do you want?" "What are you doing?" the postmaster would say. "I must go and light the kitchen fire." "You can do your kitchen work later. Get my hookah ready for me." Soon Ratan came in, puffing out her cheeks as she blew on the bowl of the hookah. Taking it from her, the postmaster would say abruptly, "So Ratan, do you remember your mother?" She had lots to tell him. Some things she remembered, others she did not. Her father loved her more than her mother did. She remembered him a little. He used to come home in the evening after working hard all day, and one or two evenings were clearly etched in her memory. As she talked, Ratan edged nearer to the postmaster and would end up sitting on the ground at his feet. She remembered her little brother. One distant day during the rainy season, they had stood on the edge of a small pond and played at catching fish with sticks broken off trees. This memory was far more vividly fixed in her mind than many more important things. Sometimes these conversations went on late into the night, and the postmaster then felt too sleepy to cook. There would be some vegetable curry left over from midday, and Ratan would quickly light the fire and cook some chapati. They made their supper out of that. Occasionally, sitting on a low wooden office stool in a corner of his large hut, the postmaster would speak of his family, his younger brother, mother, and elder sister, all those for whom his heart ached, alone and exiled as he was. He told this illiterate young girl things which were often in his mind, but which he would never have dreamt of divulging to the Indigo employees, and it seemed quite natural to do so. Eventually, Ratan referred to the postmaster family, his mother, sister, and brother, as if they were her own. She even formed affectionate imaginary pictures of them in her mind. It was a fine afternoon in the rainy season. The breeze was softly warm. There was a smell of sunshine on wet grass and leaves. Earth's breath, hot with fatigue, seemed to brush against the skin. A persistent bird cried out monotonously somewhere, making repeated and pathetic appeals at nature's midday darbar. The postmaster had hardly any work. Truly, the only things to look at were the smooth, shiny, rain-washed leaves quivering, the layers of sun-whitened, broken-up clouds left over from the rain. He watched and felt how it would be to have a close companion here, a human object for the heart's most intimate affections. Gradually, it seemed that the bird was saying precisely this again and again, that in the afternoon shade and solitude the same meaning was in the rustle of the leaves. Few would believe or imagine that a poorly paid sub-postmaster in a small village could have such feelings in the deep, idle stillness of the afternoon. Sighing heavily, the postmaster called for Ratan. Ratan was at that moment stretched out under a guava tree, eating unripe guavas. At the sound of her master's call, she got up at once and ran to him. "Yes, Dada Babu, you called," she said breathlessly. "I'm going to teach you to read a little bit each day," said the postmaster. He taught her daily at midday from then on, starting with the vowels but quickly progressing to the consonants and conjuncts. During the month of Shravan, the rain was continuous. Ditches, pits, and channels filled to overflowing with water. The croaking of frogs and the patter of rain went on day and night. It was virtually impossible to get about on foot. One had to go to market by boat. One day it rained torrentially from dawn. The postmaster's pupil waited for a long time at the door, but when the usual call failed to come, she quietly entered the room with her bundle of books. She saw the postmaster lying on his bed. Thinking that he was resting, she began to tiptoe out again. Suddenly, she heard him call her. She turned around and quickly went up to him, saying, "Weren't you asleep, Dada Babu?" "I don't feel well," said the postmaster painfully. "Have a look, feel my forehead." He felt in need of comfort, ill and miserable as he was, in this isolated place, the rain pouring down. He remembered the touch on his forehead of soft hands, conch shell bangles. He wished his mother or sister were sitting here next to him, soothing his illness and loneliness with feminine tenderness. And his longings did not stay unfulfilled. the young girl Ratan was a young girl no longer. From that moment on, she took on the role of a mother, calling the doctor, giving him pills at the right time, staying awake at his bedside all night long, cooking him convalescent meals and saying 100 times, "Are you feeling a little bit better, Dada Babu?" Many days later, the postmaster got up from his bed, thin and weak. He had decided that enough was enough. Somehow, he would have to leave. He wrote at once to his head office in Calcutta, applying for a transfer because of the unhealthiness of the place. Released from nursing the postmaster, Ratan once again took up her normal place outside his door. But his call did not come for her as before. Sometimes she would peep in and see the postmaster sitting distractedly on his stool or lying on his bed. While she sat expecting his summons, he was anxiously awaiting a reply to his application. She sat outside the door going over her old lessons numerous times. She was terrified that if he suddenly summoned her again one day, the conjunct consonants would all be muddled up in her mind. Eventually, after several weeks, his call came again one evening. With eager heart, Ratan rushed into the room. "Did you call, Dada Babu?" she asked. "I'm leaving tomorrow, Ratan," said the postmaster. "Where are you going, Dada Babu?" "I'm going home." "When are you coming back?" "I shan't come back again." Ratan did not question him further. The postmaster himself told her that he had applied for a transfer, but his application had been rejected, so he was resigning from his post and returning home. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. The lamp flickered weakly through a hole in the crumbling thatched roof. Rainwater steadily dripped onto an earthenware dish. Ratan then went slowly out to the kitchen to make some chapati. She made them with none of her usual energy. No doubt her thoughts distracted her. When the postmaster had had his meal, she suddenly asked, "Dada Babu, will you take me home with you?" "How could I do that?" said the postmaster, laughing. He saw no need to explain to the girl why the idea was impossible. All night long, whether dreaming or awake, Ratan felt the postmaster's laugh ringing in her ears. How could I do that? When he rose at dawn, the postmaster saw that his bath water had been put out ready for him. He bathed according to his Calcutta habit, in water brought in a bucket. Ratan had not been able to bring himself to ask him what time he would be leaving. She had carried the bath water up from the river late at night, in case he needed it early in the morning. As soon as he finished his bath, the postmaster called her. She entered the room softly and looked at him once without speaking, ready for her orders. "Ratan," he said, "I will tell the man who replaces me that he should look after you as I have. You must not worry just because I'm going." No doubt this remark was inspired by kind and generous feelings, but who can fathom the feelings of a woman? Ratan had meekly suffered many scoldings from her master, but these kindly words were more than she could bear. The passion in her heart exploded, and she cried, No, you mustn't say anything to anyone. I don't want to stay here." The postmaster was taken aback. He had never seen Ratan behave like that before. A new postmaster came. After handing over his charge to him, the resigning postmaster got ready to leave. Before going, he called Ratan and said, "Ratan, I have never been able to pay you anything. Today, before I go, I want to give you something to last you for a few days." Except for the little that he needed for the journey, he took out all the salary that was in his pocket. But Ratan sank to the ground and clung to his feet, saying, "I beg you, Dada Babu, I beg you, don't give me any money. Please, no one need bother about me." Then she fled, running. The departing postmaster sighed, picked up his carpet bag, put his umbrella over his shoulder, and with the coolie carrying his blue and white striped tin trunk on his head, slowly made his way towards the boat. When he was on the boat and it had set sail, when the sullen flood waters of the river started to heave like the earth's brimming tears, the postmaster felt a huge anguish. The image of a simple young village girl's grief-stricken face seemed to speak a great, inarticulate, universal sorrow. He felt a sharp desire to go back. Should he not fetch that orphaned girl whom the world had abandoned? But the wind was filling the sails by then. The sullen river was flowing fiercely. The village had been left behind. The riverside burning ground was in view. Detached by the current of the river, he reflected philosophically that in life there are many separations, many deaths. What point was there in going back? Who belonged to whom in this world? But Ratan had no such philosophy to console her. All she could do was wander near the post office, weeping copiously. Maybe a faint hope lingered in her mind that Dada Babu might return, and this was enough to tie her to the spot, prevent her from going afar. O poor, unthinking human heart! Error will not go away. Logic and reason are slow to penetrate. We cling with both arms to false hope, refusing to believe the weightiest proofs against it, embracing it with all our strength. In the end it escapes, ripping our veins and draining our heart's blood, until regaining consciousness, we rush to fall into snares of delusion all over again.